The series opens with Laurie, a middle school softball player on a team called the Pickles, who prays for success. While her teammates enjoy playing the game, Laurie's lack of confidence and, limited athleticism makes softball a stressful experience. She plays primarily to gain validation from her father, Coach Dan, who seems to be more focused on the team's star players. We also learn that Laurie's parents are recently divorced and that her mother shows little interest in her softball activities, possibly because her ex-husband is Coach Dan. During a critical moment in this game, Laurie has a chance to secure victory by catching a pop fly. However, Kai, the star teammate, steps in to make the catch, relieving Laurie but also highlighting her insecurities. The Pickles advance to the championship game, but the pressure intensifies, manifesting as Sweaty, an imaginary embodiment of her anxiety. Determined not to disappoint her father, Laurie dedicates herself to improving her softball skills. She even manages to hit the ball during practice with Kai, but accidentally injures her with a line drive. The incident forces Coach Dan to take Kai to urgent care, leaving Laurie to practice all alone. As her anxiety and negative self-talk grow, so does Sweaty, literally weighing her down. At the championship game, she notices that one of her teammates is missing, but suddenly it's her turn to bat. She fears striking out. Her dad calls timeout and encourages her to have fun, emphasizing that it's not about being the best, but about trying her best. This reassurance relaxes Laurie, and Sweaty completely dissolves. She gets pumped up and motivated to get a hit, but just as she's ready, she gets hit by a pitch and the episode concludes. The episode takes us back to the Pickles' big game 1 week before the championship through the eyes of Frank Brown, aka Blue, the enthusiastic home plate umpire. Frank takes his job very seriously, just like his role as a middle school teacher. Oh, and he has an Australian accent, which is a fun touch. We see Kai's incredible catch from a new perspective, followed by her game-saving throw to Rochelle at home plate. The other team protests, but Frank confidently stands by his call. His self-assurance is symbolized by imaginary blue armor that deflects any criticism. But off the field, Frank's life is less secure. He lives alone in a small apartment, still reeling from his breakup with Monica Park, a fellow teacher, after he refused to get married. The school janitor Francis nudges him towards online dating, but Frank resists until a painfully awkward attempt to ask out Lena, the barista, pushes him to give it a shot. Online dating is depicted as a video game, with Frank struggling at first, but eventually making some progress. Just as he's about to secure a date, he runs into Monica, his ex, but they don't get a chance to talk because Frank has a parent-teacher conference. The meeting involves Kai and Rochelle, who got caught cheating on a test. Interestingly enough, Rochelle calls him Frankie throughout the episode. Maybe she knew him before he became her teacher? I don't know. Either way, while discussing the situation with Rochelle's mom, Frank reflects on Monica, and it makes him realize he made a bad call, not on the field, but in his own life. Tearing off his metaphorical armor, Frank ditches his online date and rushes to make amends, fully vulnerable for the first time, only to find that Monica is engaged to someone else. The umpire, who always makes the right call on the field, completely botched the biggest call of his life, and he is devastated. The episode ends with a stunned Frank behind home plate as Laurie gets hit by the pitch. Frank no longer has his armor, but the man is still blue. The episode follows Rochelle, who wakes up her influencer mom, Vanessa, and convinces her to drive her to the semifinals. With time to kill before the game, Rochelle works the concession stand to raise money for next season, even selling that massive orange soda to the creepy little kid from the trailers. Eventually, she earns the money she needs for next season's dues. We once again see Kai's game-winning catch, but this time from Rochelle's perspective. After tagging out the runner, she looks to the stands only to find Vanessa filming a video instead of celebrating. Then, just as Rochelle realizes she'll need new cleats, Coach Dan calls a parent meeting. Of course, Vanessa is distracted on her phone, so Rochelle imagines herself as an adult businesswoman and joins the group of parents. That's when she learns that softball dues are going up by $600 and that the fee is due by next weekend. She tries asking Vanessa for help, but instead, her mom surprises her with an expensive pair of cleats that she can't afford. And of course, she posts the reaction online. Rochelle doesn't have the heart to tell her the truth. Desperate, she agrees to let her friend Tom copy her homework for $50, thinking it's just a one-time thing. But word spread fast, and soon, Rochelle is running a full-on cheating empire out of the school bathroom. She's almost at her goal when Tom offers her $100 to cheat on Mr. Brown's civics test. She tries, but Mr. Brown catches her. At home, Rochelle prepares to confess, only to learn that Vanessa just quit her day job to become a full-time influencer. Now Rochelle is stuck as being the responsible one, while her mom chases internet clout. With no other options, Rochelle sells her cleats online, but the day of the championship, she realizes too late that her buyers don't actually want the shoes, they want the Shake Shack keys. Rochelle refuses, runs away, and somehow they still end up with the keys. Now stranded with no phone, Rochelle sprints towards the game, and just when all hope seems lost, that creepy soda kid hands her his pocket change to make a call. She dials, hoping Vanessa will pick up, and the episode ends. This episode retells the events of episode 3, Raspberry, but from the perspective of Vanessa, Rochelle's single mom. Last time, she seemed like an irresponsible, phone-obsessed parent, but now we see that there's a lot more to the story. We begin at the deli where Vanessa works. She's full of energy, lifting the spirits of her coworkers until she gets an emergency call from baby Zane's daycare. She rushes out, but loses her job in the process. With nowhere to turn, she leans on her social media followers for support, and they lift her up with love. At the semifinal softball game, we learn that Vanessa was paying attention just in ways that Rochelle didn't see. She wasn't filming for fun, she was scolding a heckler, which is why her back was turned and she missed Rochelle's big play. And during the parent meeting, she was on the phone begging for her job back. After the meeting, Rochelle gives her the game ball and signs it. Moved by the gesture, Vanessa keeps quiet about being unemployed. Over the next few days, we see how exhausting Vanessa's life is. Cleaning, job hunting, caring for Zane, and even Uber driving for extra cash. Meanwhile, Rochelle secretly starts her cheating business to pay for softball. Eventually, Vanessa lands a job at a gym, but just as things look up, she gets a call from Mr. Brown. Rochelle was caught cheating. Rochelle denies it, so Vanessa schedules a meeting with the teacher. The conference goes well, but outside, the PTA shames Vanessa for being a single parent. As she's sitting in her car, she notices Rochelle's game ball and realizes the handwriting matches the answers on the cheat sheet in her backpack. Her daughter really was cheating. The next morning, Rochelle leaves before Vanessa can confront her, but she forgets her phone, and Vanessa uses it to track down Tom, who spills everything, including Rochelle's secret cheating account and her plan to sell her cleats to a stranger. With help from her followers, Vanessa tracks down the buyer to a house party and fights through the chaos to locate Rochelle. Two girls tell her that Rochelle already left for the game, but before she can make her way out the door, some kids snatch her phone. Luckily, baby Zane's biting addiction saves the day, and Vanessa gets her phone back just in time for Rochelle's desperate call from the payphone. She speeds off, finds her daughter, and at the end of the episode, they prepare for a serious conversation. So we're back at the softball semifinal game, and we get a spotlight on Ira, Taylor's younger brother. He's been a bit player until now, but this episode shows his incredibly wild imagination depicted in these beautiful animation sequences, which are often triggered by his trusty telescope. Ira kind of lives in his own world, and his sister is his only friend, so he's devastated when he finds out that Taylor is now dating Yuwen. Feeling lonely, he drifts towards the Bleacher Creatures, a group of troublemakers who quickly take him in, consisting of Brian, the leader, Rena, the snack thief, and Kevin, the guy who wears a chicken costume and says only one word. Whack! The crew eggs Mr. Brown's car after the game, and Ira covers for them, so he kinda becomes their sidekick. At home, Ira's parents react to Taylor's new relationship. Mom's unhappy, Dad's too happy, but Taylor is furious at Ira for bringing it up. Pushed aside by his sis and her boyfriend, he returns to his new friends and even tries to impress them with a hilarious bad Australian accent.
Spend most of their lives underground, mate.
Yeah, no, I think there's something in there.
Okay, from that moment on, I was all in on Ira. But his new crew isn't just about having fun. They manipulate Ira into helping them rob the snack shack. He knows it's wrong, but desperate for acceptance, he plays along. The group gets into all kinds of mischief, riding shopping carts, setting off firecrackers, and even harassing poor Mr. Brown at his home. But things take a darker turn at the big house party on the night of the championship. There, his crew sets up Rochelle's doomed cleat deal. But before the exchange happens, he accidentally creates a distraction, allowing Rochelle to escape. Furious, Brian destroys Ira's telescope and our boy runs back home just in time to catch a ride to the championship game. There he finds out that Taylor and Yuwen have broken up. At the field he attempts to confess what he did, but Taylor storms off to join her team. Racked with guilt, he writes a heartfelt apology to Cheryl at the snack shack. Just when it seems like he's lost everything, Brian surprisingly returns, offering a fixed version of his telescope as an apology. The episode ends on a cliffhanger. So here we are again at the semi-final softball game, but this time we focus on Yuwen, the team's star pitcher. On the surface, he's confident and dominant on the mound, but inside, he's riddled with insecurity, visualized through beautifully animated paper doll diorama sequences. Oh, and Yuwen has a massive crush on Taylor. To impress her, he films and edits that viral clip of Laurie striking out. When Rochelle calls him out for being insensitive, his inner self panics, and he accidentally asks Taylor out. Shockingly, she says yes. Their movie date goes well, so well that they hold pinkies, which in middle school terms I'm told is basically official. Later, Yuwen helps Taylor practice catching, and the two even share a kiss, sparking a hilarious montage. Things get even more serious when Yuwen lets his guard down at his mom's food truck, and Taylor does the same. For the first time, both their inner and outer selves are totally in sync. But trouble strikes when Yuwen misinterprets Taylor's conversation with Tom about tutoring. Jealousy flares, Taylor gets mad, and just like that, their middle school romance starts to crumble. Now let's jump right to the night of the championship. Rochelle is missing, so Taylor steps up as catcher, even though it means working directly with Yuwen the pitcher. The tension plays out on the mound in some really cool panel-style animation scenes. After Yuwen's arrogance costs the team a run, Taylor officially breaks up with him and walks off the field. Yep, Taywin is no more. Yuwen is stunned. Coach Dan can't get a timeout, and in the chaos, the other team scores again. The episode ends with a heartbroken Yuwen dropping the ball on the pitcher's mound, both literally and figuratively. It's 1 year ago when we see Kai and her dad driving to move in with her grandma, leaving behind her old life and baseball career. She's nervous about the change, but finds comfort in watching the Pickles play softball. Inspired, she leaves grandma's place, skates to the field, joins the team, and is instantly welcomed. The sense of belonging makes her feel like she's floating, literally. Kai bonds with her teammates, growing more confident in her new home. She tells her dad she's switching from baseball to softball. He's disappointed but supportive, and once again, Kai floats. James, a former baseball player, is intense about her future in the sport, unlike the Pickles, who focus on having fun. She thrives with her new team until one costly mistake. While goofing off in the outfield, she misses a crucial play, costing the Pickles the game. Her dad gives her a light scolding from the stands, but it crushes her, literally sinking her into the ground. Fast forward to the semifinal. We get a new angle of Kai's jaw-dropping catch and throw to end the game. Her dad is pumped, the team is hyped, and Kai, she floats again. The parents are so impressed by James, they ask him to be an assistant coach. He's thrilled, but Kai knows how intense he can be. Cue more sinking. Later, we revisit Mr. Brown's classroom and finally see the cheating scandal from Kai's perspective. Another sinking moment. Overwhelmed, Kai confesses to Laurie that her dad's pressure is getting to her. Laurie responds in classic Laurie fashion by accidentally hitting her with a line drive. Coach Dan takes her home, while Grandma helps her dad calm down, and Kai promises to own her mistakes. So it's championship game night. Taylor and Yuwen's dramatic breakup distracts the Pickles and their opponents take advantage. They're about to score another run, but Kai isn't having it. She sprints, grabs the ball, and fires a perfect throw to Tom at home plate for the out. Final inning, the Pickles are down by 1, and Kai rallies her team. Laurie reaches first after getting hit by a pitch. Man, that staggered at first is scary looking. That brings Kai to the plate. Coach Dan encourages her from the dugout. Coach Dad adds pressure from the stands. Caught between both, Kai starts sinking again until her teammates lift her up with cheers. She swings, makes contact, and fade to black. The episode kicks off early in the morning, showing Coach Dan preparing the field, his sacred ground, which is visualized by this giant protective aura. This guy lives for softball. But as the team arrives, Dan overhears whispers of nepotism, which explains why he was so tense with Laurie back in episode 1. We also learn that Dan bottles up his emotions, and that's visualized through these tiny pursed lips, which honestly are a little bit unsettling to me. During the semifinals, we see Dan being a positive and encouraging leader, but then, boom, James, Kai's father, is elected as coach. Dan is blindsided. His day goes from bad to worse when he drops Laurie off with his ex-wife at his former home. Alone in his tiny rundown apartment, the stress is too much and Dan starts to swell. Fast forward to episode 1's timeline, this is where Laurie hit Kai with a pitch. Dan drops Kai off at home, does that weird lip thing again, and then realizes he forgot Laurie at the field. Sadly, he reads the mixed text messages and spirals, drowning his sorrows in gas station, cheesy dip, and passing out in his car. A real low point for Coach Dan. Now it's game night. We get a fantastic intro scene where all the previous storylines collide as the team heads into the stadium. We feel the tension between Coach Dan and Coach James. Then in the bleachers, we finally get the full story of Ira's moment from episode 5. Brian tries to make peace, but a dropped cash box sets off a chain reaction. Ira knows his so-called friends will steal it, so he bolts to save the money. Meanwhile, Taylor, still mad at Yuwen from episode 6, sees Ira in trouble and immediately ditches the game to help. That's why she ran off the field, and that led to Yuwen dropping the ball, setting up Kai's game-saving throw from episode 7. And now, it's the final inning. Coach Dan, still swelling with anxiety, manages to calm down just enough to give Laurie the pep talk she needed back in episode 1. Laurie ends up getting hit by a pitch and reaches first base. And then we finally see what happened after episode 7's cliffhanger. Kai smashes a hit to center field, sending Laurie home for the tying run. But Kai herself is called out after getting caught in a pickle of conflicting advice between Coach Dan and Coach James. That sparks an argument, and James turns his frustration on Frank, who is too weak mentally to fight, but defends himself after encouragement from his pal Francis. And then, pure chaos. James alerts parents that the catcher might have dropped the ball. Ira, trapped under Kev's massive chicken head, crashes into Dan. Dan stumbles into Frank. Frank throws Dan out of the game, and Dan, completely overwhelmed, swells bigger than ever before. And just as all of this is happening, Vanessa and Rochelle arrive at the stadium. Taylor rescues Ira from the bleacher creatures. Meanwhile, Vanessa jumps in to defend Frank, and just when things look grim, baby Zane starts choking. Who saves the day? Frank. One solid smack to the back, and baby Zane is breathing again. Meanwhile, Dan is now the size of a literal blimp. His bubble has shattered, and the crowd is losing their darn minds. And in the middle of all of it, Kai confronts her dad. She tells him straight up that the pressure he puts on her is too much. James, realizing his mistake, does something unexpected. He apologizes and gives Kai a huge hug. Then, in the middle of all the chaos, Laurie steps up. Brave, fearless Laurie climbs up to Coach Dan and whacks him on the head with his Pickles cap. Just like that, she reminds him it's just a game. And that's all it takes to bring him back down to earth. He sees the mess that he's made, but instead of pushing him away, the team embraces him. They form a little aura of their own together. As things settle down, we get some feel-good moments. Vanessa and Frank seem to have a little romantic moment. Yuwen apologizes to Taylor, and the game finally resumes as Dan apologizes to Frank. Cut to the after-game pizza party. The Pickles are celebrating, talking about the game, but they never say whether they won or lost, because that's the point. The real takeaway is friends, family, kindness, and growth. And after the show ends, Laurie reveals to Coach Dan that she wants to quit baseball. We don't see his reaction, but something tells me he'll be cool with her decision.